Hi, and welcome to this lecture on retail consolidation. You'll notice that throughout the unit we'll work with a couple of perspectives. One of them will be the retail perspective or retailing perspective, where we work with the brands in the store, the brands in use, purchases, sales, and so on, shopper marketing if you wish. The other is obviously perhaps more like you often think about brands, advertising, brand building, brand portfolios, and so on. So the one is sort of bottom up, that's the retail perspective. The other is top down, that's the more traditional branding perspective. We will also compare online and offline a lot, since a lot of the theory and a lot of the sales still go on in offline in an offline context, but digital is becoming more and more important. This first lecture from my side will be on the retailing perspective, and it'll be sort of bottom up, and it'll be primarily on a analog or a non-digital perspective. Okay, when it comes to retail, or actually when it comes to big companies, you often think about industrial companies such as Apple or Unilever or Coca-Cola or the likes. It's not typical to think about retail companies, but over the last 2 or perhaps even 3 decades, there's been a tremendous consolidation going on in the retail industry, and nowadays it's actually not only the traditionally big manufacturing companies that are the big players. If you take a couple of the big guys like IBM, Cisco Systems, Dell, HP, and Microsoft, throw them all together, add another $2 billion US. What do you get? Well, you get the world's largest company, Walmart. Walmart started off in 1962 in Arkansas, in a town called Bentonville, or outside Bentonville, with a little was Sam Walton, an entrepreneur who started a little discount store. He turned, after a while, the discount stores into bigger and bigger stores, and eventually they became supercenters. The supercenter can be as large as 100,000 square feet. They have become really big players. You can see on this movie called the Walmart Infection Map how they spread. Actually, when they peaked, Walmart opened one new store approximately every workday or weekday of the year, so around 250 new supercenters per year. And this turned Walmart into America's largest employer, Mexico's largest employer, Canada's largest employer. In fact, it turned Walmart into the 3rd largest employer in the world. It was only the Chinese army and the Indian Railway who had more people employed than Walmart. When I started to follow Walmart financially, it was in around 1995, and by then a lot of finance guys said that they were growing by 10% per year and that would continue, and I simply didn't believe that to be true, because I thought that's impossible, because it would mean that they would double in size every 5th or 6th year. But actually, it has turned out to be true. And actually, it's even been shown that a report that's not too old showed that among the 50 largest retail companies in the world, their annual growth rate is 12%, meaning that they double in size every 5th year. And if you compare that to the largest industrial companies or manufacturing companies or brands, if you want, their annual growth rate is less than 4%. So if you compare the sizes of the largest retailers and the largest brands, retailers have chased the brands in size for a number of years, and now they've actually passed most of them. So at least in a local market, like in the UK, Tesco is far bigger than Coca-Cola and so on. So this is interesting because, well, obviously if you compare online, offline, you can see that Walmart is still much larger than Amazon, even though it's assumed that in not too far into the future, Amazon will pass Walmart. Anyhow, you can see this is sort of true for most companies. I started work with H&M around year 2005, and they've doubled in size twice since then. So they too doubled every 5-6 years. And they double in volume, they double in number of employees, they double in number of stores. So retail companies have a tendency to work with volume as a KPI. So they want to increase in volume. They don't care so much about the margin because they know that if they raise their prices, they will lose to competitor. Brands tend to work a different way. They rely more on margin. So as an ROI measure, it's not necessarily so that the retailers outperform the manufacturing brands just because they grow faster. But the net profit of a typical retail company is around 1.5 to 2%, whereas it's around 3 times as high in the typical brand company. And the retail industry probably can keep consolidating, because if you look at the countries where you have the highest population, the consolidation still has not occurred at the same pace as it has in the Western world. So in the Western world, a lot of the markets are mature for the big brands or the big retail brands, whereas in a lot of countries there still is a lot of not so organized retail going on. It's small shops still, like here in Bath actually. This is very much the Western world and everything, but still here it's a lot of independent stores with their specific ranges and so on. And I think, a lot of people miss that when the big malls with the big brands come, and it's more of the same everywhere. So what are the consequences of this? Well, I usually say at least 2 consequences are worth considering. One of them being price negotiations or the power in the supply chain. So if you think about 5 porters, 5 forces, used to be that the brands were dictating the conditions for the retailer. So the brands like Coca-Cola, they had their sales forces and they planned the soft drinks shelves or departments for the stores. They did what they wanted. They put up the signage they wanted, and they just threw promotions and coupons onto the retailer. And the retailer was a really small player in comparison, so he didn't know what to do about it. But it's been a couple of cases where Walmart have shown the way. And this case with Rubbermaid, I think, is interesting. A couple of years back, Rubbermaid had been voted the highest quality consumer brand by US consumers. So when they went to Bentonville to price negotiate with Walmart, you can see here I illustrated with a boxing ring. Walmart greeted them and said, "Welcome, and we would like to buy as much of kitchen supplies, or the same share of kitchen supplies from you next year as the previous year, but you know our rules. We want you to lower the price with 5%. So Rubbermaid said, "Well, you must be kidding us. Haven't you seen the news? We've been voted the highest quality brand of all the consumer brands in the US. So we want to not only maintain our prices, we want to increase our prices." So Walmart said, "Well, good luck with that, but we will delist you. We'll throw you out of our stores." And they did. And after that decision not to lower the prices, Rubbermaid was filed for bankruptcy in 5 years. So not being able to be listed in the biggest retail chain in the US made them fall from the very top to not existing at all. Another example, what if you take a brand that everybody knows, everybody likes, or most likes, and they will not leave customers' memory just because they're not visible in the store? Then it must be okay, right? So take the leading consumer brand in fast-moving consumer goods or grocery, Coca-Cola. throw them into the boxing ring with Walmart. When they go to Bentonville, Walmart said the same to them. Well, you know our rules. We want to buy the same share of soft drinks from you next year as we did previous year, but we want you to lower the prices 5%. Coca-Cola didn't agree to that, of course, but then Walmart said, well, okay, and we know you are so important to our shoppers, so we'll keep you in the stores, but we'll give you no display places, no secondary placements, no end caps, no extra places whatsoever. But guess who will give that extra space? Exactly, Pepsi. And that decision not to lower the prices cost Coca-Cola in sales. Per square meter of lost sales space, they lost in sales $80 million per year. And that was, straight into the pocket of Pepsi. So what this is about is that retailers have become big, and they have become consolidated, meaning that each and every store has the same assortment policy, pricing policy, and so on. So they really are the gatekeeper or the interface to the shopper, and their power in the supply chain has increased enormously. And this was unheard of as long as 10, 15 years ago. But now everybody knows it. Now all the big brands play hand in hand with their customers, that is the retail companies, instead of just telling them what to do. So that's one of the reasons why I think retail marketing or shopper marketing is so important. According to Procter & Gamble, the display in the store is called the first moment of truth. Procter & Gamble has always been a leading company when it comes to understanding the necessity of collaborating with the stores and the importance of the in-store display and everything. This here is a figure just showing that this is true as in all markets, or most Western European and American and, well, Western world markets. It is the case that there is a very limited number of retail brands that own the market. So here you have 4 supermarkets owning 76% of the market share. So it used to be that retail companies were small independent stores in the hands of the big multinational brands, but now actually it's the other way around. The other aspect, thinking about that, the store is so important and it's so controlled by the store brands, by the store retail companies. It's also become all the more obvious for the whole industry, brands and retail companies, that at least 2/3 of the purchase decisions, shopping decisions, are influenced in the store. 2/3 of everything that the shopper leaves the store with has been influenced by what the shopper met with in the store. So, well, this could be impulse purchases where you see a perfect gift, a soda, a candy bar or something, and you buy it, but it was totally unplanned. But it could also be that you see a promotion, or you see another package, or you're reminded of something. So it can be planned, partially planned, or an impulse purchase. And so there's a rich sort of literature or number of ways of looking at these in-store influences. Some of the early studies show that around 2/3 of all the purchase decisions are influenced in the store, and that's still the rule of thumb, even though more recent studies have shown actually that as much as 80% of all purchase decisions are influenced in the store. And I guess the less time we spend cooking, the less knowledgeable we are, the more we are in the hands of those who provide us with visual information in the store, that is the visual merchandisers of the store. This is a so-called decision tree, and here you can see that when it comes to chocolate, And not surprisingly, it's a very impulse-driven category. So here, 77% of all purchase decisions are made in the store, actually. If you take bread instead, which is more of a planned category, then you can see that out of 9,000 customers, 3,000 plan to buy bread, 6,000 plan not to buy bread, and at the end, 36% of those who actually bought bread, those purchases were influenced in the store. So compared to the 77 for chocolate, bread is much more planned category. And this is the same database, but showing the share of influence on the brand level in the store. So when it comes to tea, 92% of what people buy in the tea category has been influenced by what they see in the store. So obviously, people perhaps select another flavor, select another package size, or another brand, depending on what's there on the shelf. So this, of course, has a great influence also on the attractiveness of shopper marketing. So basically, the fact that the stores own the display, the interface towards the shopper, and the fact that all the industry has understood that it's actually in the store that the purchase decision is being influenced. These two factors together has made shopper marketing grow in importance. And actually it's come to that many companies now devote twice as much money to their trade marketing, promotions, sales activities as to their traditional marketing, because of this rule of thumb that 2/3 of the purchase decisions are influenced in the store. Sometimes I think it's fun to dig a bit deeper into the unplanned or impulse purchases per se. This is a study, qualitative study, where they looked at different kinds of, they tried to categorize different sort of aspects of unplanned and impulse purchases. So oversight is that the typical low frequency items perhaps could be toilet tissue, dishwashing liquid, things that you need to see on an end cap to remember them, light bulbs, plasters, things like that. Deferred decision, you wait until you're in the store so a more informed decision can be made. This can be for a lot of things where you don't really know that much about it. Could be meat or something like that. Shop as a prompt. Many people use the store as a kind of a shopping list. So they're familiar with that. They first go into the fruit and vegetable department. So they go there and they look at the berries at the entrance perhaps, and they buy some strawberries or blueberries or something like that. And then they see the tomatoes, and then they remember that they should have a salad. So they buy some lettuce and stuff like that. So they use the store as a prompt. And also unplanned is demanded. For instance, when you buy clothes, it's hard to make up your mind entirely prior to going to the store, because you need to see what's there, what's available, what's the fashion, and so on. Also, when it comes to more impulse, more emotionally driven purchases. So one way of distinguishing between unplanned and impulse is that unplanned, then you've planned the category but not the specific brand. Impulse is when you haven't even planned the category, so it's just from nowhere. Accelerator impulse is when you stockpile. Compensatory impulse is the reason why you have candies and so on at the end of the store, because when you've done all that hard work of buying the groceries, you want to treat yourself, so you buy yourself a candy, or you buy yourself a beer after work or something like that. Breakthrough impulse is when you actually on an impulse buy something, and then this turns out to change your behavior, forever. For instance, you might be going to a store with a friend, and this friend buys, some running shoes or some running equipment or so, and you just also buy it, and then you start running. So you change your life or your lifestyle after having made an impulse purchase. A blind impulse is simply when you cannot resist, and it's the kind of purchases that you often feel a bit bad about afterwards. And usually when I do this in face-to-face lecturing, I stop here for a while and I ask the audience to think about if they've ever made a really expensive impulse purchase. And most people, after having reflected on it, agree that they have. And I used to think like this, actually, that perhaps to make the really sort of expensive purchases, perhaps there needs to be almost a little ingredients of impulse there to dare, making that purchase. Even, when you buy a house, what is it that makes you eventually say yes to one house, even though you might have been very careful and logical throughout the selection? Could be some simple impulse that makes you, or some sort of stupid thing that makes you actually buy that car, that house, or that boat, or whatever it is that's really expensive. Because sometimes you need to dare losing control a bit, or letting go of control.